Hi folks, welcome to my channel or welcome back. My name is Kat. I'm a licensed registered dietitian nutritionist, and on this channel I like to talk about weight inclusive and weight neutral focused approaches to health, as well as diving into scammy and, in my opinion, unethical nutrition related businesses, products, mostly nutrition related MLMs, and other fear mongering nutrition related claims. Now I want to talk about a specific concern that I have with the introduction of what is called interoceptive awareness within the intuitive eating framework, which is basically the growing of one's internal body awareness. And specifically, I want to talk about how that might impact people with health anxiety. So if all that sounds good to you, let's go. All right, so we're talking about intuitive eating. If you are not familiar with intuitive eating, I will leave a video link describing the framework around it. A lot of people don't recognize that there is an actual framework for intuitive eating, so check that out if you are wanting to learn about intuitive eating. I'm excited about this video because I got to reconnect with one of my friends, and it started from a conversation from a story that I was sharing on Instagram. Now, this interview was from way earlier this year, but it actually got lost. I had saved it on a hard drive, an external hard drive, but I did not know where it was saved exactly, and I didn't name the file, and so it took me a long time. I thought I had lost it actually, that I just deleted it, but when I was organizing I ended up finding it, and I'm so glad I'm able to do this video after all. But the video is from a while back. You'll see that I'm in my old office area that is now a toddler playroom. Now we're going to be talking a little bit about disordered eating patterns, and so if you feel like that might be a trigger to you, then just be aware of that. This video might not be for you, and that's okay. You got to take care of yourself. So part of my health journey, the mental side of things, I think has been in part affected by health anxiety to some extent throughout my life. And I do believe that that played a role in some of my very unhealthy orthorexic patterns of behaviors when I was an older teenager and young adult in my early 20s. Growing up as an athlete, I saw how much nutrition played a role and impacted my recovery, my training, my performance in sports. And I went into nutrition studies for the perfect diet. I worried about food quality. I buried myself in what was available at that time online, which there was a lot of red flags. There was a lot of not so evidence-based information. For a time, I was scared of consuming pork. I thought they were just gonna make me sick and unhealthy. I counted every single calorie that I was consuming. I had a fear of bad foods and unhealthy foods. At that time, clean eating wasn't a thing that I was aware of. This was over a decade ago, but I am sure that if that was around, I would have fully subscribed to the whole clean eating approach. My intake was rooted in this kind of hopeful perfection, and I hoped that becoming a dietitian would lead me to that perfect food consumption. And I was in college for part of that time, towards the end. Now thankfully another student at that time was talking about the book Intuitive Eating, and I ended up getting it from a secondhand bookstore. I devoured that thing. I had also the audio version that I listened to multiple times whenever I would drive home from college, and it just played a huge role in really stepping away from toxic dieting consumption practices. And I have gone through that book so many times, each time getting a different kind of nugget of wisdom from the framework. And even though the first time I read that book was over a decade ago, it is still something that I'm constantly seeing something else cool in the book whenever I read it again. Now, it did take me multiple times of reading that book and just kind of pondering on that, marinating in that. It wasn't an all or nothing kind of switch. I desired to have a healthy relationship with food, but it was scary stepping away from those kind of very controlled intake patterns. Now, I have deconstructed from those confusing and just unhelpful guilt-promoting feelings and practices around food. Intuitive eating really helped me away from that kind of restriction and the guilt and shame around food choices. And everything was good, fast forward until I became a mom. In my relationship with food, that was good, but it was the health anxiety pieces, the concern about something happening to me that started to get bad. Just anxiety, convincing myself that I was having some heart issues, or just things that would lead to my toddler not having a mom and it being something like this like random health thing that happened. And one of the exercises that is often promoted or recommended to begin the interoceptive awareness kind of skill is like being able to feel your heartbeat, or doing a body scan. And it's in those body scans that I started to really kind of feed, or my health anxiety started to grow more, when normally that wasn't an issue. Now this is where that Instagram story comes into play. So I was just doing things as I normally was doing, and I was also taking into account interoceptive awareness, that body interoceptive awareness. And I saw a TikTok that I really, really identified with. Okay, so the TikTok is from Your Anxious Therapist, and the text on the TikTok says, "When my husband asks how I slept last night, but I convinced myself that a random sharp pain in my head meant I was about to have a brain aneurysm, so I stayed awake all night because I was afraid to let myself fall asleep." And that led me to making an Instagram story about interoceptive awareness, and then taking it a step further and questioning how that might relate to someone who has health anxiety whenever they feel like a little bit off or something with their body, that they have like some anxiety around that. If that would be supportive, that would be a good thing, like to still promote interoceptive awareness. So my friend, who is also a mental health professional, actually reached out, and she wanted to just kind of talk about this concern. And so we got on a Zoom call, and I will be playing that in a little bit. Now, I do want to read how interoceptive awareness is described in the intuitive eating framework, and then I'll be sharing our discussion around the building of interoceptive awareness and how we might approach that with someone who has health anxiety. Interoceptive awareness is the ability to perceive physical sensations that arise from within your body. It's a direct experience, a felt sense that happens in the present moment. It's not the past or future, it happens right now. It includes basic states like feeling a distended bladder, hunger and satiety cues, and the felt sense of every emotional feeling. Every emotion has a unique physical sensation in the body. When you perceive bodily sensations, it gives rise to powerful information to help get your psychological and biological needs met. In fact, there is a growing body of research that shows interoceptive awareness is profoundly implicated in your physical and mental well-being. Ultimately, intuitive eating is a personal process of honoring health by listening and responding to the direct messages of the body in order to get your needs met. The principles of intuitive eating work either by enhancing interoceptive awareness or by removing the obstacles to perceiving and responding to the felt sensations in the body. The obstacles are usually from the mind in the form of rules, beliefs, and thoughts. Now, they do have an important caveat here. They say if you have experienced trauma and or been dissociated from your body, that it may be important to work with a specialist in trauma and intuitive eating, depending on your situation. Long story short, interoceptive awareness is still something that is very much promoted, it's supportive, but if you have a history of health anxiety, it's just something that you might want to be aware of. So with all of that said, let's go ahead and move to the next part of the video, which is that interview with my friend. Karen is a therapist and licensed professional counselor. Let's dive in. This is something where I needed an expert in mental health to talk this through and really kind of discuss this. Somebody who also knows about nutrition, kind of a background in nutrition.
I'm Karen Ramirez. I am a therapist in Dallas, Texas, a licensed professional counselor.
This whole idea of feeling something like your heart rate, I don't know, like having a little bit of anxiety around that, if you are feeling like little variances and differences, and then going to worst case scenario, because intuitive eating is something, and the workbook is something that I have recommended to a lot of clients and people who I haven't worked with. If somebody does have underlying health anxiety, whether it is like diagnosed or undiagnosed, where can we kind of stay within scope of practice? Dietitians, where can we recognize where interoceptive awareness might cause maybe potentially a little bit more stress or concern or anything? Is that something that I need to be scanning for, or like not scanning for, but like asking questions like, do you have health anxiety?
I think it would be a good question of like, hey, do you experience health anxiety? That can look like, feeling anxious about health related things and feeling, dealing with ruminations or dealing with, catastrophizing thoughts. I'm glad they have the caveat there for like disassociation and trauma, because definitely if they're on that on that scale, dealing with something like that, their body won't feel safe to them at all. And that's that's part of that dissociation that they're kind of escaping their experience and that to be safe. But just on like the health anxiety part of it, and mentioned that in there, there's kind of an issue with people trusting their bodies. And that's part of like, the thing about good, sounds like the good part of intuitive eating is it's like learning to trust your body again.
Like not relying on rules and plans and programs.
If you don't trust that your body is going to let you know whether or not this is something serious or not, it's hard to differentiate that. So those like small like feelings, it's like, oh, is this, something deadly, or is this something, that is just like a random weird body ache that's going to go away in a couple hours. And
how do you differentiate between that though? Like,
yeah, I'm not a doctor, so I can't say for sure. Part of it is recognizing, okay, this is anxiety. This is not really my body. Like, this is anxiety trying to protect me. Like, it's trying to serve a function, but right now it's in excess. Like, it's not serving the function that it's meant to serve. Then with kind of more interoceptive awareness, like through therapy or through like, possibly like other self-help guides, you can start to recognize, okay, when anxiety comes up, this is what it feels like. So it's easier to recognize, okay, this part is the anxiety talking. And so I can kind of calm that and then make a plan for this issue. Because the ironic thing with health anxiety is that you're less likely to get help because you ruminate on it. Yes, you ruminate on it and you're like, is it an issue? Is it not an issue? So long that people that don't suffer with that typically are like, oh, okay, if it's sticking around for a while, like I should probably get it looked at, and they go and get it looked at.
Yeah.
Like straightforward. Right. Like health anxiety, you're like, is it anything? Is it not anything? And then you do that so long that you actually just don't go, or you delay it, for longer. So it's kind of recognizing anxiety and then saying, okay, I'm going to make a plan. And so whenever the anxiety comes up, I'm just going to refer back to the plan. Like, hey, if this issue is still here tomorrow, I'm going to make an appointment. Or if the pain gets, bad, then I'm going to deal with it. And I think that's a safe way to handle it.
Kind of approach it.
Yeah. And then, I mean, I know for myself, I've kind of made a mantra that, if this is an emergency, my body will let me know. So it's kind of instilling that trust back to, if it's like life or death, my body's going to let me know that that's an issue.
Right. Especially like if typically like you have been okay, like generally healthy overall. And yeah.
I mean, I think that helps to start to develop like a trust with your body. And then over time, you can kind of recognize, okay, this thing is off, so let me go and get this checked out, rather than it being just a rumination that continues to kind of eat up your time and mental space. With the like body scanning, like you can share a little bit about intuitive eating, because with the body scans.
Yes. So intuitive eating is so much focused on hunger and fullness cues. It is one of the more, I guess, recognizable or spoken about, more popular aspects of the intuitive eating framework. And of course, sometimes we need to go beyond that, especially like if somebody has any kind of medications that alter hunger and fullness cues, or sickness, if they're high stress levels that might also, or even if they have a lot of physical activity, or sometimes even like just in neurodivergency, and a variety of reasons could impact somebody either not feeling hunger and fullness cues, or maybe being a little bit off. But one of the ways that a lot of dietitians, and I have talked about this before too, is bringing more awareness or growth in that area specifically, is just kind of taking a 5-minute body scan. So just kind of going through different areas of the body and just recognizing how it's feeling. So whether it is like an elbow, even like once you get down your arms and stuff. So just like bringing your attention and awareness to various parts of the body, and not spending a whole lot of time on there, but just kind of shortly checking in with the intention of having more of that connection with your body and listening to it more, and trying to build the skills to listen to it more. And so that's really where, like, if you have unknowingly health anxiety and you're doing those kind of body scans with the intention of building that interoceptive awareness, which is something positive that we want to do with intuitive eating, is that something that, can cause maybe more harm if checking into those areas brings more stress.
It can. I see that with clients too. Like they'll have like a lot of tension in parts of their body, and they're like, I don't know why this happens. I don't know why I have this so much pain. And of course I tell them, see a doctor and make sure that
right.
But also we kind of check in like, okay, when does this come up for you? Is it when you're feeling like anxious? And so we kind of do like the body scans too of like, okay, what are you feeling and where do you feel it? And we'll even have them like describe, where do you feel it? They might say in their stomach. Okay, like imagine it's a color. What color would you say that is? And kind of have them like mentally picture this. And so then we can also like help them say, okay, now imagine it getting smaller and like mentally, and kind of create a mental safe place around it so that they feel more in control of that sensation. Because as they calm, the sensation will kind of calm down with them. So if it's, for instance, if it's their heart, like if their heart is pounding really hard, and being able to say, okay, let's do these breathing exercises. And then as they feel like their heart rate slow, it kind of brings a sense of like, okay, my body was telling me this, but I can also reassure my body that it's okay. It's important that as you're gaining more interoception awareness, that like also how to trust your body and how to work with your body to soothe it.
That makes sense. So like, I feel this way. What do I do now?
Yes, yeah. Because it's like, if it's just like, okay, now I'm feeling all these awful things, it's like, okay, bye.
Great.
I'm glad you're more aware now.
Right.
I mean, but to me, it logically makes sense that about 20% of what our body experiences is based on like the thoughts that we're having. So we might have like a thought of like, oh my gosh, that car is going to hit me, and our heart start racing and our body starts feeling sensations, right?
I totally believe that for myself.
But like 80% of what we feel is based upon like all the other stimulus that our body is receiving. 20% is coming down and the 80% is coming up. So for instance, if your body is feeling a certain sensation, that's coming back up to your brain, and then that's influencing your thoughts. For instance, if there's a sensation attached to like a dangerous situation, for instance, you experienced, I don't know, the one that comes to mind because it like is a popular one is, say you were in kindergarten and you like accidentally peed your pants, and now you have like humiliation from this experience, right? Mm-hmm. But say that's associated with a certain like feeling, the cold desk or something. Mm-hmm. And then now anytime you put your hand on like a cold desk, all of a sudden your heart starts racing and you're not thinking about it, but your body is like, memories are attached to those things. So learning to kind of work together with that and kind of get yourself more in tune with your body and your body more in tune with your mind, like that helps build a sense of safety. And I think that would then help clients be able to do more intuitive eating, like the book said, like kind of removing barriers.
I love that you said in our conversation how you have this mantra that sometimes our bodies are just weird sometimes.
I know like, you might have like a random pain in your shoulder or something, and it's like, oh my gosh, am I having a heart attack? But then
literally like last week.
But it's like, or it could just be weird. Like there's so many things going on in our bodies that it just makes sense that some things would be random pain for a minute, and then the next couple of days it's gone and it didn't mean anything.
Yeah. So in that way, it kind of I hear that and I kind of want to be like, well, let's maybe not build this kind of interoceptive awareness, but I can see how the interoceptive awareness can actually like maybe help work through that. Like it's kind of this, I'm seeing it as this kind of long journey kind of path, and the more skills that you build within there, like when things come up, you just kind of work through them. I don't know if that makes sense, but like, yeah.
To me, it's so all connected, like your whole body, your brain. So that means like your mental health and everything that's so connected with each other. So anytime you're really not aware, that can cause kind of miscommunication between like, all these parts. And that's kind of
sense. So like, it's good to promote.
I don't think, unless you have, well, even with disassociation, actually, especially with disassociation, you're trying to promote grounding, which would be like awareness, being in your body, because that's what's the opposite is happening. So even in those situations, that's kind of, the goal, to get back to that point where you're feeling like your body. And to me, it's like a very like holistic thing. Like you want your body, your mental, your mind, and your kind of values and everything to be aligned and feel like you're living authentically. Going back for a second too, when you have the body scan, it might be like a body part, like the elbow. Another thing that with health anxiety we do is kind of, as we're also like scanning, we might talk about anxiety as if it's a part of you, saying, okay, this part is meant to help me, kind of urge me to be safe. Then also how that part affects the rest of our body, like the symptoms that are attached to that.
Like, it's trying to do a good thing
it
for
is
me and support me.
Yes. It's not that we're trying to be anxiety free. If you think about athletes, like if you don't have any anxiety, your body isn't preparing itself to like perform its best. So even that is like healthy anxiety. It's just when it gets to the point where it's interfering, like, because if you fear the anxiety rather than welcoming it as like a part of you, then it can inhibit you, that interoception, but also like living your life in general. If you're like trying to avoid, and anytime you avoid things too, like actually going back to whether or not this is a good thing or not, it's a good thing, because if you were to avoid it, that anxiety grows. Like if you're avoiding body sensations, then anytime you do have a body sensation, the anxiety is going to be magnified. So you really, it's a pain in the butt, because everything in your body is like, don't do it. It's not safe. And at the same time, if you continue to do that, it just reinforces it. So if you're like, if I just don't think about my body, and if I try to not worry about it and not be in tune with it, then that can just reinforce that avoidance piece and have short-term relief, because you're like, okay, I'll just, distract myself, or just avoiding the thinking about it at all. Then that can like just reinforce that, rather than feeling like, oh, I'm feeling this weird sensation, and either logically approaching it or kind of making a plan to deal with it.
Makes a whole lot of sense. So you were mentioning in our conversation how maybe having a health screen or having a screening for health anxiety during intake, and then partnering with a therapist to help prevent an increase in the anxiety might be a good idea.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it definitely won't hurt.
Yeah. Okay. So something that you had mentioned in our messages was about something that has helped with your clients to become in tune of the physical symptoms that are associated with them changing from the parasympathetic versus sympathetic. Because if you can recognize when that is happening, then you know when to bust out the coping skills to get your nervous system back into the parasympathetic state. So can you expand on that a little bit more? And like, I talk as far as like on my channel, I just talk about sympathetic and parasympathetic in the terms of like rest and digest, but like that's the kind of extent of those.
Sure. So when I'm working with clients and I'm trying to help them practice, calming techniques, one of the things that for some clients I'll go into is identifying different states. So saying, okay, when you're, feeling anxious or worked up, what is happening in your body? And so we'll practice visualizing a time where they felt really upset. And so they'll kind of list out and kind of chart what they feel in their body. And then we'll also visualize and chart out what they would feel when they're in a happy, content state, more of that parasympathetic, state. So then as they're kind of going along their day, one of their things that they would work on is identifying as they're shifting into a different state. Maybe they walk into a room and it's like busy, and all of a sudden they're starting to like feel these symptoms. So they're starting to recognize. And the goal is just for them to think, oh, okay, I am now shifting into this state. And so that's kind of the first step, is recognizing, okay, this change is happening. The next is also listing out and practicing in session ways of shifting back into parasympathetic state. That would include like the deep breathing. It might include like temperature changes, an ice pack like on their neck or something might help them kind of calm back down. And also like mantras and things that would help them shift back. Also, we would kind of chart out like associations with each state. So for instance, I know for me, the sensation of like sun on my skin is very associated with like a parasympathetic state, like a relaxed state. For some people, heat is the opposite. They're like if I'm getting too hot, I'm going to start getting anxious.
Yes.
So there's very personal things like that they might chart out, so that they know whenever they're starting to shift into a sympathetic state, they can kind of use things as anchors and recognize like the triggers that might put them in there, and kind of realize, okay, I'm shifting because I'm having this trigger, but at the same point I'm safe, so I can calm myself. So, okay, this is the heat causing me to get anxious, so I'm just going to go to my list of things and practice. So in that's kind of where like it's helpful to understand your states and being able to feel like you're more in tune with your body, so you can work with it
and recognize maybe down the line those more hunger and fullness cues and energy levels. And
because they're not scary anymore. It's like, okay, I'm shifting into this state because for a reason, and it might be for like a not real threatening reason, but at one point, like that was associated with something that was negative for you. So being able to feel like, okay, I'm going to be okay. Maybe that opens up the door for them to feel like, okay, now that I'm okay with feeling my heart rate go up because I know what that is. Then maybe it's like, okay, no, I know when I'm feeling hungry, that's not like anything wrong. That's hunger, and I can help myself.
Or see what that hunger is, if it is related to actual hunger or like what kind of hunger, cravings or anything, and why that might happen. Very cool. Okay. Intuitive eating, I mean, it's something that I've read multiple times, and every single time that I read it or listen to it, I always pick up different things from it. This kind of view or this area specifically is not something that I really have spent time in like thinking about so much. So yeah, this has just been really, really, I think, important to kind of view the lens through.
Yeah, I think it kind of all wraps up with like being able to trust your body. Like, and trust like you can make good decisions with one, being able to know when not to seek help and that kind of stuff. And, when trusting that you're going to make good decisions, like with food and with your health, There's
a lot of body trust, and I think that can be scary because it's so much easier to have someone tell me exactly what to eat and when to eat and exactly like this plan, but that's not really empowering.
And bodies are weird. So it's like, we're trusting a weird like organism.
So taking away from this, I think it would be very beneficial for me to include a validated survey regarding health anxiety, just to kind of, even because if somebody is not working with a therapist or maybe even like thought about, how they're approaching their health or anything, they might not realize that's something there. And so just kind of having that be like hey, like just kind of be maybe aware of this.
And maybe in the process, you might be helping like the health anxiety, with that whole process.
Okay. So kind of wrapping it up with the links between health anxiety maybe and interoceptive awareness and how intuitive eating really promotes that. Kind of what are your final thoughts?
Figuring out, whether or not you may be struggling with some health anxiety, whether you're like starting to ruminate on some kind of health issue and it makes it hard to seek help or having maybe panic attacks or anything like that, then being able to seek a therapist to work with you and find ways to manage that and maybe become more in touch with your body and trust your body. Same with that, those hunger cues and kind of having those blocks and working with a dietitian and getting help there and recognizing that anxiety is trying to serve a purpose and it's kind of like welcoming, it to the dinner table and it not being so scary rather than trying to avoid and trying to, demonize it. And that over time will kind of lessen it and help it serve the purpose that it's meant to serve.
Nice. Not every headache is because you have brain cancer.
Most aren't.
Right.
Most aren't. And then if you continue to have the headache, then make a plan. And anytime that anxiety is coming up, say, I've got a plan. And if it gets to this level, I'm going to seek immediate help. But if it doesn't and it continues, then I'll seek help at that time. Or maybe it'll just go away and you'll start recognizing, hey, actually those headaches might be linked to being dehydrated. And that's where,
being hungry. So I will leave a link for your website in the description box down below. Thank you so much for coming on and having this discussion with me and reaching out after seeing my story and just kind of getting that conversation going. All right. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching. Remember, just because you Google a specific symptom, that doesn't mean that the results are your reality. Thank you so much to Karen for just allowing me to have this conversation with you. I think it was a really valuable conversation and I'm so glad that this video did not get deleted, that I found it. It was very valuable for me. Our bodies can be a little weird at times and it doesn't mean the worst case scenario. Remember, talk to your doctor if you can, not Google. If you like this video, please leave a like and make sure you're subscribed. I would greatly appreciate that if you want. And remember, you can strive for health without subscribing to diet culture. I'll see you later. Bye.